So kia ora everyone, kia ora koutou. Thanks for coming along and joining us this morning for this ITP Fireside Chat on all things professional development and skills and business analysis skills. I'm so excited about talking to you today, Lizzie. So I'm joined today by the fabulous Lizzie Valentine, who I spoke at another event with last year and thought I've got to get her on one of these to have a bit of a discussion. So welcome, Lizzie. Thanks for coming along.
Oh, thanks, Vic. It's an absolute joy to be here. You're on my favourite topic.
Good, excellent. Well, why don't you kick us off by giving us your kind of potted history and what you do for a day job today? So tell us
Thanks.
what you want to share.
Sure. So I suppose the question I'd like to start with is how come I'm so passionately interested in competency and capability? And look, I'm at the stage of my career where I've worked for enough leaders to know that capability at the top, and in fact anywhere in an organisation, is an absolute deal breaker. It is the difference between actually reaching the value that you say you want to in a major transformation or not. And there's some good research in behind that, which of course people can contact me after if they want some of the papers or some of the ideas that I speak to. But in terms of how did I get there? Well, I think it's kind of useful. Early career, I started out as an organisation development practitioner. And now, of course, that's morphed into being a business analyst, which I teach on the Masters of Business Analysis at Victoria University here in Wellington. A fantastic program, might I say. And we've seen just an astronomical rise in the number of really talented people who are at all stages of their career, early through mid and into late career, coming along and learning these skills. So why did I get interested in that? Well, I mean, my career took me through banking, government, profit, not-for-profit, so lots of experience as a contractor and as a consultant myself. And I developed capabilities in the people side of change. And a lot of people kind of roll their eyes when you start talking about the people side of anything, thinking, of course, oh no, not another tree hugger. But I was never one of those tree huggers. I was always really interested in what it took to achieve the end result that somebody was saying they wanted to achieve in a big scale change. And so I developed a bit of a, I suppose, experience base in restructures, startups and mergers and acquisitions, which have got heavy implications, and a lot of that relies on people and their capabilities. I suppose too, if you wind my career forward to the last 10 years, I've been a practitioner around capability and change, and also an academic. So it kind of led me through doing an MBA and finally doing a PhD at Queensland University of Technology. And what brought those things together was I sat on a board of directors, and every time I said, look, there are serious technology implications to this. And people would roll their eyes, they would ridicule me, they would say, oh no, not her again, talking tech. You know, what does she not? She know, because of course women in tech 20 years ago weren't that common. And so it meant that I did a PhD in what capabilities boards and senior leaders need in particular to make good decisions during big scale transformation with a technology underpinning. And I guess that's brought me through today, where I'm now an adjunct professor at VUW. I'm also an executive coach, and I'm also an ongoing consultant.
Great. Thank you. That was a great plot of history, and I love the way you tackled the passion. So let's start big picture. And why do you think professional development matters so much right now, especially in the digital and technology kind of world?
Great question. And honestly, I think if I was to give a nod to my colleague, Bonnie Ardier at VUW, who's just completing a PhD in this exact question in government, my take on this is just that if you are not capable of change, and you don't understand that capability is built up of like a jigsaw puzzle of competencies, your organization, your senior leaders, even your board of directors is going to miss out on the opportunity to potentially manage down risk and achieve a return on investment. It's actually that simple. Let me just give you an example of how nuanced this is and perhaps explain a little why it gets left out. Is if you, for example, are putting a big proposal through to your senior leaders or your board of directors, maybe through to Treasury if you work inside government, I would guarantee that 100% of those documents, which take good, talented people, sometimes months to develop, will not have a strategy matching capability analysis. I'm going to say that again, strategy matching capability analysis. Now, to me, as somebody who gets really excited about capability and competency, it's like, why? If you think about it, the difference in capabilities between a digital transformation or a data transformation or even a technical IT transformation are very, very different. So you need to be capable at the top of making good decisions and overseeing it. If you are in a leadership position, you need to understand how to lead that. You don't necessarily need to know how to do it, but you yourself or your colleagues distributed across your senior leadership team need to be able to say, have we got what it takes to make this transformation happen? And if you go into those documents, those funding requests to government or the proposal that goes through to your senior leadership team or your board of directors, I will almost guarantee that there will not be an analysis that says in there, to do this, we need to be capable of this. And this set of capabilities is built up of X, Y, and Z. Now you've got the superpower to be able to then conduct an internal analysis. So this is where the fluffy stuff comes out of your HR stuff and goes into hard, cold analysis on whether or not you are actually capable of transforming in the way you say you want to. And that's what gets me really excited every day.
Yeah, and it's such a great insight that I know so many organisations don't even think about. So yeah, thanks for kicking us off with that. Now, for everyone who's watching this, you're welcome to ask Lizzie specific questions using the Q&A function, and I'll relay those to her. But in the meantime, I'm just going to carry on with my questions. So you just mentioned strategy and transformation, and we know that you've worked across governance and education. What changes are you seeing in the types of skills people need so they can thrive in a digital workspace?
It's a great question, Vic. And look, some of them are just absolute basics and not actually a great deal of change. But then, of course, you've got the bleeding edge of technology where things are changing very rapidly. So I think it's again, it's a really important thing to understand what you're trying to do. It's a bit of a long answer, but I think it's an important distinction for your audience, because if you think about a digital transformation, so the goal of a digital transformation, in a general sense, is that your organisation, government, private sector, doesn't really matter, continues to thrive or deliver the value that it says it's going to deliver to customers or citizens in a digital world. So in other words, it's not about the technology, it's actually about what you do either competitively or positioning wise to thrive going forward, where things in the tech sector are changing a lot. Now, those capabilities tend to lead towards leadership, whether that's a traditional view of leadership, whether that's a more distributed view of leadership, which my colleague Bonnie Adier talks about. It doesn't matter what type of leadership, but you have to be able to lead that type of transformation. Whereas if you're talking about a data transformation, the goal of a data transformation is that you actually are transforming because you want to use data as an asset. Now, that's very different from competing in a digital world. This is about what you do with data. So that's got a lot of capability associated with data security. In New Zealand, we've got data sovereignty. You need to understand data architecture, data strategy, etc., etc. A very different capability and also a very different set of competencies that complement that. And then finally, underneath all of that, you can't make any change, whether it's a structural change or a process change, for example, without actually hitting into some aspect of technology. But even here, what is it that you're trying to do with the technology? Are you trying to actually plug in a big new system? We quite often are led by our senior team who want the new fancy shiny thing. What capabilities do the people inside the organisation need to be able to say, to test the assumptions, to understand the ripple effect out into process, policy, customer experience. So again, it's a very different but complementary set of capabilities that you need from a quite technical viewpoint. So I guess, kind of circling back, the answer is it really just depends. And this is why I think I want to hammer home to people that if you're not doing a capability analysis as part of your big proposals, you are really missing out on a business opportunity to increase your chances of ROI. I would never say guarantee because we're talking tech. But definitely increase your chances of ROI, make those kind of fixed or variable cost decisions around buying in, really capable people just when you need them, or actually recruiting to increase your bench strength at whatever level you need in order to deliver what it is you say you're going to deliver. So there is nothing fluffy about training, development, or capability analysis, as far as I can see.
And I guess for the individuals who are wanting to be involved in these big projects or small projects, they're also missing out on that kind of justification for training, aren't they? So
definitely.
Yeah, so there's benefits at both levels for the individual and for the organisation.
Yeah, look, you make a really good point, because even at that level, people will put, we need training. And I was head of learning and development for Westpac for a while, and one of the things that if you really want to make your senior leaders in banking eyes roll in desperation, start talking behaviours. Bankers really like numbers. So if you are able to, for example, even segment or, define what you mean by training. Not all training is a bottom in a seat in a course. In fact, that's one of the most expensive and least effective ways of building skill, competency, and therefore capability in your people. It can be as simple as, having a really good intranet with searchable content on a new system. It might be something as simple as a quick cheat sheet that you put beside a new system so that people know how to do those, Control Alt whatever type access things. The bit that's missing there that actually helps demonstrate capability is if you've put a new system in, are you actually measuring whether or not people are A, using it, B, using it in the way that it was intended, and C, actually using the system or making sure that you've set the system up so that it is informing you about people's confidence and competence, which of course is the kind of end result of becoming competent and capable. So again, a kind of a long answer to a very simple question. But if you're feeling confident and competent, then that actually, another piece of research, has got a tangible effect on productivity and morale, and therefore bottom line results. So it all adds up to your business case if you put that time in to conducting capability and competency analysis right up front in a big change project.
And it should be a no-brainer, right, for that investment. So let's talk about something I know you're really passionate about, because I've heard you say this a few times. You often say that everyone should be a business analyst. So the first part of my question is, what do you mean by that? And the second part is, what is a good BA mindset, and what does it bring to the table in any kind of role?
That's a great question too. Thanks, Vic. Well, I think what does a BA mindset? So I think a BA mindset, and actually I'm going to answer this in kind of an odd way. My father was an extremely competent aviation engineer, mechanical engineer, and who then went on to being a mechanical engineer and a school teacher. And the reason why I talk about my dad is that he had one of those brains that I believe engineers pretty much all have, that thinks in whole systems. So my take on a business analyst, and especially the top business analysts, is twofold. The first one is that they understand that any business or person or system in nature is a whole interdependent system, that if you tinker around with one part of an engine or a garden or a person, it will have implications somewhere else. The second part of it is that for a good business analyst, I think there are two kind of distinct types of business analysts. One is more generalist, and a good generalist business analyst actually understands pretty much all of what I call technical discipline. So that is, they understand finance, they understand marketing, they understand people and culture, they understand operations, process, and enough about technology and data in order to ask the right questions to elicit the problem. The flip side of that is that they don't think in whole systems. They are asked to do a job, and they don't have the skills, the competencies, and therefore the capability to say, look, that's great. Thank you very much for bringing me in. Do you mind if I ask you some questions? Because a good business analyst will be always striving to get to the heart of the matter, to clearly work with the client, no matter how senior they are, to define the root causes and therefore the priorities of the problem. And in all my years of experience in this, the difference between the analyst that goes in and goes, oh, okay, you want that new shiny thing, fine, and the analyst who says, do you mind if we ask you a few questions just to check you need that new shiny thing, is chalk and cheese. And ROI on one hand, and the potential to go very, very wrong on the other hand. The other part of the question is now lost to me. I've lost my train of thought. Sorry, Vic.
Well, yes, you often say that everyone should be a business analyst, and so I just thought you could expand on the why for every role. So someone might be a data person, or they might be an architect, or they might have some a project manager and be thinking, why do I need business analysis skills? So can you just elaborate on that?
Yes, absolutely. And thanks for bringing me back onto the question. From my point of view is, if it doesn't matter what role you're in, if you don't understand, or if your organization is working in those traditional silos, it makes it very, very difficult. So if you translate that into a person, and let's say they are a generalist business analyst or a technical business analyst, which was circling back to my earlier point, if you're working in a technical silo and you don't understand that technical change can have a very, very serious impacts on customers, profits, staff, competency and morale, and even your organization's capability to function, then you've got a problem. If you are operating in isolation, don't understand that you are a part of the whole, and how that works, then you really genuinely do have a problem. So it kind of answers that BA mindset thing. Even if you are not a technical BA, you still need to be able to either bring along the right people with the capabilities and competencies that will help you elicit the questions about the change that needs to be brought about and how you can make that successful. And you know, it really is just one of those things that you cannot do this in isolation, because we are working on interdependent and interrelated and integrated systems, even if they're not functioning all that very well. No man is an island, or no person is an island. And I think the more we go down a cooperacy, the better it is. This whole business of thinking about how you actually get that cooperation working up, down, and sideways across organisations, I think, is probably one of the things that New Zealanders are not bad at, but they don't leverage.
Fair enough. Now I've got a question in the message board from Chris, who you and I both know, and he is asking, a lot of change proposals in government where he works tend to be written up by external consultants. Should they be doing more of the strategy matching capability analysis as part of their assignments?
Well, hi, Chris. Look, yeah, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's just one of those things. And also, we are not talking about a training needs analysis. This is a new area that I've been really banging on about since I started doing my PhD in 2012. That I scanned all of these documents. I went into all sorts of documents to try to find out at what point people were identifying what new capabilities they needed, even if they went, well, we're going to need to be capable of this in the future, and it just wasn't there. So you're not talking about training needs analysis. It's actually capabilities are built up of competencies. Training may come some way down the line, but a capability analysis is actually about those big scale things. Do we need a different type of leadership? Do we need a different approach? How do we know we're going to be competitive? I think a really good example is put yourself in the boardroom of a traditional taxi company going back about 10, 15 years ago, before Uber and Lyft and the rideshare apps and what have you came along. And you could see that technology was changing really rapidly, and you thought there must be an opportunity here. Now, a traditional board would go, well, what's tech to us? We might get a more efficient telephone system, or we might create a slightly better customer experience of booking a cab, but they didn't have the vision or the technical competency to say, actually, let's get rid of all of the fixed assets, build an application, and develop ride sharing. And having had that thought, what new capabilities might we need in order to make that jump from a traditional taxi company into a non-fixed asset company? Can you see? I don't know, that's an extreme example, but actually I think it's a really good illustration. It's that Kodak moment. They missed it and they went out of business.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it
exactly.
really can be that serious, that if you don't understand that capability to change is actually the new superpower. And I would also add capability to change at pace and at scale. It's not about small anymore. It's about what do we need to do really quickly in order to support our citizens, or do a better job for customers, or identify markets that we're not currently satisfied. Whatever it is, you have to be capable of making that change. And that differs for every situation and every single organisation. That's why it's not a cookie cutter. It's not a traditional training needs analysis. It's about what's your strategy and what capabilities are you going to need in the short, medium, and long term in order to be successful.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. I hope you found that useful. Now, Lizzie, I want to ask you from your experience in teaching and coaching professionals at all levels of their, ages and stages of their careers. In your experience, what holds people back from investing in their own development and realising their potential?
I think there's two ends of the scale, Vic. One end are the people who think they know everything. There's not a lot of them out there, but in leadership, it's actually very, very serious.
Yeah.
If you are uncoachable, it's a matter of time, really, before you become a problem. And that's where sometimes boards of directors will step in and actually remove a senior leader. If at the other end you don't believe that you need to change, or that you have got a mindset about, oh, I'm too old to learn anything. I mean, I'm going to go to my grave as a curious, thirsty learner. As far as I can see, learning is just the most exciting thing. But in the middle are people who have enough self-awareness to know that things are changing around them, that there are exciting opportunities no matter what age or stage you are at. And understanding, I think probably the most empowering thing is understanding what's your career goal or what's your retirement goal. Where do you see yourself? And therefore, do you need to, embellish your toolbox? Do you need to, you don't need to go and do a PhD. You can just start reading in an area. I read every day. I'm on all sorts of technical, all sorts of weird and wonderful websites and forums and podcasts because I value learning almost above everything. But not everybody's like that. It just depends on who you are. But just, I guess, my one piece of advice, and when I'm coaching or somebody says, do you think I should do an MBA? I always say, well, what's your career goal? And if they can't tell me, I'll say, go away and give me a 5-year and then give me a 10-year life goal, not necessarily a career goal. And then let's have a conversation. Because if you're not clear for yourself what brings you joy or what brings you satisfaction, no amount of training is going to help that.
What success looks like for you is quite hard for people to articulate.
It can be, that's right. And sometimes it is actually quite radical. Somebody might actually have a complete change. But I've found that the executives that I've coached who have this kind of humble self-awareness, I don't mean self-deprecating, but they are able to go, I've got superpowers here, but actually where I think I'm going to need to boost my skills is here. What do you think we should do? Those are the leaders that really do tend to lead and lead well. And they are the kind of people who will, in my experience, lead a transformation better as well. They are able to be a bit real.
Yeah, so that's a good answer. Now we're going to move to a subject that you and I are both quite passionate about, which is SFIA. And I guess, and for those who don't know, SFIA is the skills framework of the information age. But I'm going to ask you first, if you can describe in your words what SFIA is, and then talk about why frameworks like this are really helpful when thinking about your own capability and growth in this really rapidly changing world that we're in. So, SFIA, go for it.
SFIA. Oh, look, I've been around SFIA for 13 years now. I did a deep dive into SFIA because I was looking for competency sets in my PhD for boards of directors around IT governance, and there simply weren't any. Or there were, scholarly articles that were mostly task-based and weren't actually what technically you would describe as a competency set. And I stumbled on what was then SFIA 6. So it's come up to SFIA 9 now. It is a global and internationally recognised framework for skills for the information age, as you quite rightly introduced. It covers, remarkably, 7 levels of competency, from entry right through to senior management and governance. It covers, I think, when I last counted, there were more than 50 bodies, such as the PMBOK, which is the project management body of knowledge, BABOK, business analyst body of knowledge, etc. There's more than 50 bodies of knowledge or industry competency sets that are aligned with SFIA. And so it's an enormous tool and it's enormously flexible. I think probably, though, Vic, where you and I got quite excited about this is that the New Zealand, Australian, Canadian and UK governments, at a minimum, I'm sure there are many others, actually have in-country licenses, which makes this enormously powerful competency set available to everybody. Corporations and large departments might have to pay a nominal fee, but it really is affordable. And New Zealand and Australia, the Australians have done wonderful things about aligning things like their job descriptions with the competency sets, for example, using the competency set for technical recruitment, how you go about using a competency set. What I think is really interesting, though, is that it's not just about technical competencies, although it is aligned with most of the, well, not most, but a lot of the certifications. You can actually do certifications that are based on this. What's really helpful about the set, I believe, is that alignment with those bodies of knowledge, because you can actually go in, you can conduct a search on business analyst body of knowledge, and it gives you all of those 7 layers curated specifically for business analysts. So I think that's a really important thing. And then I've discovered more recently that smart universities and institutes of technology are actually basing their review of courses like the business analyst or the project management or some of their technical courses. So you can do data analysis, you can do all sorts of things with this competency set. They're actually basing any review of their curriculum against the competency set. And that's clever, because that means you've almost instantly got the ability to align your university or technical institute programs with certifications from these bodies of knowledge. And that's valuable to people who are spending their money doing study to improve their career prospects.
And you will be thrilled to know that Toi Mai, the Workforce Development Council for Creative Culture, Recreation and Technology, are all of the new qualification development they're doing is aligned with SFIA. And so I've been working with them off and on for the last couple of years, and they've totally embraced this. If there's a guiding international framework, why don't we align quals with it? So yeah, thought you'd be pleased to know that.
Oh, look, I'm absolutely delighted. It just makes business sense. Why would you reinvent a competency set? And, this is where, a nod to my consulting colleagues, or maybe it's a bit of a sideways glance at my consulting colleagues, is that don't ever reinvent the wheel. Why go about the painful business of taking an organization through developing competencies when you can actually utilize these kind of competency sets and save a whole lot of time and money?
While you were speaking, Darren popped up with a question straight away, which is, when hiring, or can you use SFIA when you're hiring? Does it fit well into the timeline of interviews, or could the applicant do some form of self-assessment first during the process?
Yeah, great question, Darren. Look, I personally have used it in both things. I actually use it with my master's students. One of the first things they do in week 1 is I've developed a short competency set to do a self-assessment on where you are currently at and where across the pantheon of skills you need to be a business analyst you're currently sitting. So you can do a before and after when you have done my digital transformation consulting practice module, MBUA 531 at Victoria, if anybody's interested. So it just depends. I mean, in terms of using the competencies for recruitment, Darren, what's really great about them is that they have really nice, succinct, they spend an enormous amount, the people at SFIA spend a lot of time working on those short, sentences, which are called competency descriptions, that are behavioural. So you can use those in behavioural event interviewing, no problem at all. Have done that myself. And it's always about just take that back to what is it that you're actually after. I think recruiters and managers who are hiring against competency sets make the mistake of putting too many things in without actually saying that. One capability question is, what one or two capabilities does this person really need, and therefore what are the competencies we need to hire to? And you can cut through a whole lot of weeds by being very, very focused on what's the role there to do in order to be successful. What are the one or two absolute must-haves? What's your drop deads, price of admission that they absolutely have to have, otherwise we can't hire them. And if you can be that clear and that focused, then these competency sets are gold.
That's a great answer. So we're nearing the end of this, and I've just got a couple more questions before I'll let you give us a bit of a shout out for what you do. How do you see professional development changing over the next 5 years or so? And how should individuals and organisations prepare for this shift? With the invention of AI and everything else that's coming on the horizon, what are your thoughts?
Well, number one is don't panic. Look, there's a lot of kind of fear media out there. I've stopped watching mainstream media. And the reason why is because AI in its various forms, starting with, simple chatbots, has actually been with us for quite a long time. There's a lot of kind of fear mongering goes on. And so come back to basics. If you are thinking about a career change, or you're wanting to improve your prospects of getting a promotion, whatever it is, be really clear about that 5 to 10 year horizon. Where do you want to be, or what job is it that you're actually targeting? What are the core competencies? And then make use of something like the SFIA framework. Do a self-test. Just do a dive in there and go, oh, I'm really good at that. I hadn't realised I was at a level 7, because you can, when you go into an interview, say, I've conducted a self-assessment against the Babcock curated suite of competencies for business analysts in SFIA 9. And I believe my strengths lie here. Or I asked my colleagues in my XYZ team, and they have confirmed, you've actually had a different type of feedback. So be clear about where you're going. And always make sure that you use these kind of competency sets to do without beating yourself up about how terrible you are at everything, because nobody is. You will always have strengths and areas of opportunity for development. And if you focus those on where you want to go with your career, then you're going to be very targeted in where you invest your time and maybe your money if you decide to do some actual educational training.
Well, that kind of ties into my last question. So for somebody who's listening today wondering what they do next, where should they start?
Career. What's your career or life goal, or both? Start with your life goal. What do you want to kind of leave behind over the next 10 years of what's your legacy, and what's your career goal? What age and stage are you at? Do you want to actually have a whole new career? Therefore, what transferable skills have you got? It always comes down to where do you want to be? What capabilities do you need? What current competencies can you hand on heart demonstrate? And this is where those frameworks like SFIA are so useful, because you can go, okay, well, I actually thought I was a bit of a novice, but going by this competency set, I can see that I'm actually about a level 5. I'm a very good intermediate. Now, I'm going to just give you a small illustration of how I use this in coaching some of my students. So the top 3 students out of every class that I teach, I offer to personally mentor them. And often they will say, oh, but I've never been a business analyst, and where do I start? So I get them to do a competency self-assessment, and I ask them to forget about the title of business analysis and just tell me where they have had experience, where they have built skills, because you would be amazed at people who have had really quite senior roles that come into my master's class at VUW, who say, I've never been a business analyst, I can't get a BA's job, and yet they might have managed a credit facility in an investment bank, or they may have actually been, I don't know, a specialist in data. You know, they've got these really specialised skills where they could go down either a generalist business analyst path or a more technical business analyst path. And in fact, quite recently, one of my students that I was mentoring, terrific young man, he had exactly these same problems. We worked on his CV, and it was a matter of saying, I have not had business analyst skills. I will never encourage people to tell lies, but I have built the capabilities that you seem to be after here, here, and here through this experience. And bang, you got a senior BA's job.
Right. Wow. Good story. Good to illustrate with a story. Yeah. One last really quick question from the message board. Kay has asked, do people in tech have to learn to use AI tools? One recruiter has said he won't recommend anyone who can't use the tools. Some friends refuse to use energy demanding tools like ChatGPT for ethical reasons. Is this all realistic? You got a quick answer for that one?
No. Look, jury's kind of out on this one. I use ChatGPT. I use the same as I've been using Google and search engines for many, many years. I'm not quite sure how to answer that one. I think
No, it's fine.
Yeah,
as you said, don't run away from it. And yeah, embrace it. But
it's a really hard one, isn't it, Vic?
Yeah.
Because it's the Kodak moment. Is it going to? I think the question for you, Kay, is how important is it for you to continue in your occupation where AI may be a factor? You may not need to use AI, for example, let's just use that, but you probably need to understand what the impacts of AI are going to be on your organisation or your industry and sector coming up. And if you don't understand at least that, you don't have to use them, but you do need to understand what's happening in your sector and how it might impact. Because if you don't, you may just have your own Kodak moment.
Thank you. No, it's a good answer, and I understand where you're coming from, Kay, in asking that question. So final thing to ask you, Lizzie, you want to give us a shout out for what you teach at the University of Victoria?
Sure. Look, as I said, I teach on the Masters of Business Analysis program. It's a fantastic degree. We've been building and building and building. I've been teaching here since I came back from Queensland University of Queensland University of Technology, so since 2017. And I tend to get the students at the very end of their degree and teach them how to apply things like architecture and strategy and business process in a consulting or business analyst's context. So I'm very practical about this. And it's, of course, all about the competency of analysis and writing and communicating. Yeah, and I love what I do.
And if people want to track you down, they can find you on LinkedIn, can't they?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for sharing your time, insights, wisdom, advice with us today. I'm sure it'll get lots of people really thinking, and really appreciate your time. And from here, I'll say ka kite and we'll sign off.
Ka kite anō. Thanks, everybody.
Ka kite. Bye.